Thank you very much, Andrea, for the introduction and for the invitation to speak to you all this afternoon. Okay. So, academics have a critical role to play in fostering student mental well-being. This is because the academic curriculum structures and gives coherence to student life. Increasingly, the curriculum is the one consistent element of the student experience. And I think the conversations we've had this morning have really added even more weight to those statements. If students are jumping into their car at the end of their classes and going home, if the campus is shut down at 5 o'clock, then the curriculum, and I mean curriculum, if your student is a PhD student, I mean curriculum broadly in terms of what we offer in terms of teaching and learning. So we really need to leverage the curriculum. It's also just a second caveat. This is not to say that academics are more important than professional services colleagues. We're all in this together and partnership is critical. So who are our students then? So the median age of students, according to the Higher Education Authority, the median age of undergraduate students in 2022-23 was 20, and of all of our students was age 23. And why does that matter? So the new proposed definition of adolescence is age 10 to 24 years. So Susan Sawyer and colleagues who are leading the global adolescent health commissions for the WHO and the Lancet proposed this definition in a paper in 2018 because they were drawing on data that says that puberty is happening earlier, which we know, and the adult roles that young people adopt that signify adulthood, because there's no biological marker for adulthood, completing full-time education, home ownership, marriage, all of these roles are being pushed out further and further, and further again still. When will young people own a home in Ireland? So the proposed definition is age 10 to 24 years. So this means then that our students are firmly within this age range. And we know that this is a challenging time for young people. It is the time of peak onset of mental health difficulties. So aged 18 was the median age of onset of lifetime mental disorders. That was from a large meta-analysis of 192 or 196 epidemiological studies. That was a paper published last year. So it is a time of concern, for sure, in terms of the development of mental illness. So it's really important that we pay attention to that. However, we need to be careful and, I suppose, contribute and together create a very balanced narrative. So yes, it is a time of risk, but adolescence is also a time of opportunity. So how we frame all of these conversations, and ideally underpinned by very robust data, that's critical. This is really important. So although adolescence is often thought of as a time of turmoil and risk, the old Sturm und Drang or storm and stress model, it's more accurately viewed as a developmental period rich with opportunity for youth to learn and grow. So it's referred to as the second chance in the second decade. And one of the reasons why we know that this is an exciting time of opportunity is what's going on in the brain during that time. So with the advances in functional MRI and all the technology, we've gotten much more nuanced insights into what's happening in the adolescent brain. And it's known now that the capacities that we really call on in higher education to be, I suppose we historically conferred the role of adult learner onto our college students. But really the thinking has changed. And also a caveat to add in here is this isn't about bubble wrapping our young people or pejorative terms like the snowflake generation. This is applying a developmental perspective to teaching and learning. And our job, I think, is to scaffold in a developmentally appropriate way. So if we are asking our students to use these capacities and resources like self-regulation, like weighing up risk, like looking at future orientation, those capacities are not yet developed and really won't be fully developed until the mid-20s. So I believe it's really important that in terms of all our work in higher education, and particularly through the curriculum, that we apply a developmental framework. This is one such framework, and there are many nice ones. For me, what I particularly like in this is the focus on mindsets, self-regulation, identity, and agency. So Coleman, you said this morning that you thought the focus on individualism was a big part of perhaps some of the dominant narratives nowadays, or one of the contributory factors. I believe that we are asking young people to self-regulate in a world that's more dysregulated than ever. And we really don't teach self-regulation. We maybe do well-being, we have our well-being plant and thing. But fundamentally, how do we teach self-regulation? And we need to be looking at that right throughout primary, secondary, and tertiary education, and even preschool education. So another framework that I really like to draw on is this theory around mindsets. And if we look at the bottom of the pyramid, we can see that our students' physiological needs are the foundation for their learning. And I think if students are worried about food, which they are in the cost of living crisis, if they're worried about accommodation, which they are, and maybe they're traveling and commuting, if they're worried about love, which it is a developmentally appropriate task at that age and stage. So they're bringing their full selves into their classroom. We know that all of these things, geopolitical instability, the housing crisis, the cost of living crisis, from the State of Our Nation's Youth report, just published very recently, these are pressing issues. Very troubling data around climate anxiety. A study published in 2021, 45% of the 10,000 young people across 10 countries said that climate anxiety impacted their daily functioning. So this is a real issue. So that's what we need, that's the starting point that we're meeting our young people in the classroom. The scholarship about learning mindsets is fascinating, and people may be familiar with growth mindset and the work of Carol Dweck. But that's actually expanded into, they now have 3 different strands for learning mindsets: purpose and relevance, belongingness, and the kind of more traditional growth mindset. So how in our classrooms are we facilitating my abilities through effort? I can succeed, and this work has value and purpose for me. So they're questions for us all as educators, really, to think how can we foster those attitudes and feelings. So we've heard the word resilience. It's really important, but it doesn't sit on any one student's shoulders. We can't confer all of that responsibility onto the individual. We need to look at upstream things like the housing, like the cost of living, like climate anxiety. But we also need to tell students that not just it's okay not to be okay, but it's also okay to be okay too. So we need to help students see, yes, what does resilience mean? How can you strengthen it? And to show and to teach them. Michael Ungar in Canada talks about resilience is not a DIY endeavour. So resilience is about being able to access supports when you need it, which I think is a really helpful way to frame it. A critical part of all of this is mental health literacy for both students and staff, and I would argue parents, coaches, because I think we're seeing now in some media portrayals, everyday conversations, the conflation of mental distress with mental illness. A student in one of my classes one day said, "Oh, my alarm clock, when I hear the Apple ringtone for my alarm clock, I get PTSD." So we really need to do a very considered, and I think our student organisations, our students' unions and the Union of Students of Ireland could really lead the way in this in a considered way in terms of mental health literacy. There's lovely programmes out there. This slide is taken from Teen Mental Health in Canada, who Student Minds in the UK then took their information. If you're interested in all of that, these are 2 public access resources that are available in UCC, but available beyond UCC if you just search through the National Forum. But just to quickly move to the final set of slides then, in terms of service delivery, my strong belief is that we need to look at the tiered model that's been talked about, universal, targeted and intensive interventions. This is an adapted World Health Organization model from an earlier paper now in 2018, but looking at how we can frame and conceptualize the services across the different levels. And I think when we start to map in that way, it's very helpful to see where's the funding going, where's the concerted effort going, where's the research going, where are the partnerships happening. I've developed a co-curricular micro-credential for students on time use and well-being, which incorporates all of the work on neuroplasticity, on brain development, on time use, and some materials on mindsets. I deliberately partnered with the Academic Services Centre within the university to offer it as a universal intervention to all young people, young students. And the data show that there are statistically significant increases in mental well-being, resilience, growth mindset, sleep health, occupational balance, gratitude, and self-compassion through it. So it's really important that we can offer a suite of interventions to support our young people. And just to conclude, none of this is soft skills. Without these skills, we are not sending out graduates into the workplace, into society. So we need to stop seeing these as lovely, nice, soft, fluffy add-ons, but see it as core business of the university. The top 10 skills from the World Economic Forum, we can see resilience, flexibility and agility, motivation and self-awareness, curiosity and lifelong learning. So this is our focus. This needs to be our focus, how we support our students to develop these skills. I won't go with that. These resources are available on the National Forum website, and if you want to quickly hover across the QR code there, it'll bring you to a Padlet that we developed from a recent National Forum funded symposium on curricular approaches to wellbeing, and all of the resources are on that. So if anyone is interested, get in touch. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.